The Minnesota Timberwolves get one back against the Oklahoma City. They are now down 2-1 in that series after a 143-101 ass kicking, I think is the fairest way to put it. That is just
that one should count. Should be 2-2 after that. They won. Wow, that was crazy. It was an impressive win by Minnesota.
It was as pure of an ass kicking as like I've seen in a comeback game home in a while. I will say, so I think some people chalk this one up to shooting variance. I think that the Pacers game was like game 3 was way more about shooting variance than this one was. Yes, the Timberwolves made shots like that. There's no doubt about that. They went 20 for 40 from 3. They shot 50% from 3. They really, really got it going on offense and heated up. And that was in the first half too. It wasn't like they just made a bunch of shots at the end. To me, it was way more about what Minnesota did defensively and the adjustments they made to make life way more difficult for Oklahoma City to initiate, and playing more of like a base shell style defense made it way harder for the Thunder to get the kind of shots that they got in the first 2 games.
I mean, we talked about it with Gobert. We've talked about Gobert quite a bit in terms of like not feeling like, at least I didn't feel like in the first 2 games, we saw this defensive impact for a guy that's been a multi-time defensive player of the year. And I think you were the one that actually brought it up in terms of him playing a little bit higher. And we talked about how when he plays as deep as what maybe he's comfortable with, SGA, J-Dub, Hartenstein, they're comfortable shooting that 8 to 12 to 15 footer because that's where they live anyway. And so what Minnesota did, along with, I think, asking Gobert to step up and challenge in those areas of the floor, is they also took their perimeter and they extended that out as well. So I just feel like they took their defense and said, we're going to pressure you a little higher. We're going to get in you, but we're going to always be there showing help, showing bodies and being disruptive. And then Gobert was much more impactful. He got beat a couple times, but I think the net result was obviously very positive because he challenged multiple shots in the mid-range from those guys. So I thought it was a great defensive adjustment in terms of energy, intensity, but also just like adjusting just a little bit with where you're picking up, how you're guarding things. It wasn't some crazy thing. They didn't go play 48 minutes of zone. I feel like they actually just said, hey, let's do what we do. Let's tweak it a little bit better, or tweak it a little bit and then just do it better.
I mean, shout out to another icon and, friend of the show here, Nekias Duncan. Average pickup point for when the Wolves would pick up Shea and actually like start defending him. How high up the floor the defender was is what we're talking about here when they finally started to guard Shea. In game 1, it was right around half court. In game 2, it was right around half court. In game 3, it was actually 35 feet.
Interesting. Okay.
Away. It was not nearly as far up the court. And if you look at, average pick and roll distance for Shea in terms of where Oklahoma City was setting screens, for instance, game 1, 1.14 points per possession. Game 2, 1 point per possession. Game 3, 0.73 points per possession. And look, like some of this is noisy. It's one game, right? But particularly, I think that what you saw, even more than the pickup points, and the pickup points are a piece of this for sure, they went under everything. I think that what they decided is we're going to make Shea beat us hitting pull-ups from 3 more than anything. And Shea it's just not what he wants to do. He's not going to try and shoot, a ton of threes. But if you pick him up at half court, what you're doing is you're letting like Hartenstein or Chet or whoever set a screen. And if you're going over that screen while you play drop with Gobert, instead of going under the screen and playing drop, you're just giving Gobert more space that he has to defend at the end of the day. It's not like Shea is going to pull up from 38 feet as it is. It's just not his game. I loved this defensive adjustment from Chris Finch. I thought that this was brilliant. I thought it was so smart, and you could really feel it. The other thing that they did really, really well was they brought help from, honestly, the strong side a decent amount of the time. And we often talk about helping one pass away, but it wasn't like a full help where Anthony Edwards, for instance, would be playing on Jalen Williams and he would like fully stunt into the lane. It was just, hey, Ant, what we want you to do is we want you to play right in between the elbow and the wing on the 3-point line and just crowd that space just a little bit. Make it a lot harder for Shea to have even just like a tiny bit more space to be able to snake that dribble back and hit Gobert in the way that you did, for instance, in game 2. I thought that even just that was so smart. I loved what Chris Finch did defensively to adjust things in this game.
Yeah, I really like the idea of forcing Shea into being that type of scorer. And obviously he's incredible and maybe he's going to make you pay, but you said it where it's not necessarily what he wants to do. And whenever you have somebody as good, right, the MVP of this league, you want to force them into trying to do something that they may not want to do. Can you take away their first option? If you can take that away, can you take away their second option? If you can force them into, I think I wrote it in my notes somewhere earlier in the season. Like, I wonder what would happen if you just force Shea into taking 12 threes in a game. What would happen? Yep. And I don't know, eventually he'd figure it out in a series, but what if it just, for a few games here, what if they forced him into that? In one of the games, he maybe hit 6 or 7 of them, but it's a mentality thing. And I think that's the bigger part of it. It's not so much like, I'm sure people would throw the Shea shooting percentages at us. It's just like, hey, we're going to take away the snake. We're going to take away the bump. We're going to take away the free throws. We're going to make you a 3-point shooter. And just the way that can and could affect you mentality wise is real. And so I love that from Minnesota in terms of them, kind of employing that. And like you said, then it also makes Gobert more effective as well in those situations. I thought they did a great job off the ball. You talked about them showing themselves, showing bodies, but then they also were able to recover and scramble and be disruptive, which is like OKC gets a lot of credit for that, and rightfully so, but Minnesota has guys and length and athleticism to disrupt you as well.
Yeah. And like essentially what this is, it's not like dissimilar from the zone idea that Denver portrayed. You know what I mean? And Denver showcased in that series. They're playing man. It's a totally different concept in a lot of ways. But the idea of what you're doing is you're trying to make Shea beat you from distance.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're playing in more of a shell conservative base defensive structure. And that's going to make life harder for Oklahoma City because, again, this is a team filled with guys that don't love to shoot pull-up threes. Right? Like we can talk about, the incredible ability that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has. We can talk about the incredible ability that Jalen Williams has. The guards off the bench, like Alex Caruso, Aaron Wiggins. My goodness. Wiggins will take some pull-up threes. He'll take threes in general. Cason Wallace is not a guy that loves to take pull-up threes, right? Like it's a group of players that just generally, it's not their default option, right? So playing more of a base shell style defense, that was really, really like sharp and smart to me.
And probably why Dagnall went to Isaiah Joe, right? Like he's the one guy that does probably want to live in that world. And unfortunately he wasn't making shots and it didn't end up working. And I think it plays right into what we talked about with Minnesota playing zone. Zone is a good idea if your players believe in it and something that your philosophy adheres to and you've practiced and all of that. It's, again, a completely different level, but I never played zone as a coach and people are like, well, what do you do against non-shooters? We don't guard them. We play man, but we stand, 5 feet away. And so it's the same idea as, okay, these guys are probably more confident in Finch saying, hey guys, we're playing man tonight, but Ant, instead of playing aggressively in that passing lane, I want you to play over here. And, all of those different things. And it can almost look like a zone at times, but you stay to your man-to-man principles and concepts, which all of those players are going to be more confident in than if Finch walks in and says, okay, guys, 2-3 zone. I want you to like Ant may be playing the exact same thing off the ball. It's just, he feels more confident because he's playing man as opposed to playing zone. So I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be lost that their defensive intensity, energy, production was as good as what it was. And then they made shots the way they did. I think there is correlation between those, in my opinion. And so that those things flow together. And, Anthony Edwards, last 2 games, I know they lost game 2, but back-to-back 30-point performances, back-to-back 6 assists. He's averaging 9 rebounds a game in this series. And he's gotten better every single game. So I know he had the turnovers snuck back in this one. He had 4, but here's what makes Minnesota dangerous to me. Even though I think Thunder win this series, they can have the best player in this series. They can. Anthony Edwards can be that guy. They can get hot from the 3-point line if you want to talk shooting variance. This was a really good 3-point percentage team in the regular season, and they can get after you defensively. I'm not saying all those things will happen, Sam, but all of those things can happen, and that makes them dangerous throughout this series.
I completely agree with you. The other thing that I do want to note just about Ant's offensive performance, I liked that Chris Finch came in and ran a few sets off the ball.
100%. 100%.
They had a couple of actions where they ran him off of floppy actions, right? And the one particularly that I think got him going a little bit was he came off of a baseline screen into a pin down from Gobert and flattened out off the pin down. I can't remember who passed him the ball, but it was just a super simple set. He got a wide open 3 from the corner wing, area. And it was just beautiful. And that's the kind of stuff where if you're trying to make life easier for Anthony Edwards, getting him shots off the ball is a huge way to do it. It makes life so much easier for him, in my opinion, to be able to go and, run off the ball, try and run away from somebody as opposed to running into the teeth of Oklahoma City's defense where you have 4 different guys trying to, swipe and snatch at the ball, dig down into his handle. That's where things get harder for him. So let's make life easier for him. Let's run some off-ball stuff for him. I thought that was a really, really good adjustment too.
Find ways to create advantages, right? He does enough off the bounce and the pull-up jumpers and all that. Anytime you can create an advantage before he touches the ball is just so huge. You give him a couple of easy ones. And one other thing I want to make sure we talk about, and I know you tweeted about it, that's why I want to make sure we bring it up. Their response in the third quarter was huge. Whenever OKC came out of halftime and got it down to 22, yes. I believe. And I know people are 22. It's it's the 2025 playoffs, guys. We know the craziness that can happen.
Here's the exact thing. Oklahoma City won game 1 in the second half by 30.
Yeah.
If I'm Oklahoma City, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to come out and we're going to try and punch them in the face and we're going to go on a run here to go. And they did. They went on an 11-2 run and immediely Minnesota just shut the door. It was nope, we're not doing this today. Not happening.
Right back to 29. And those little things are huge, because not only do you not let them back in and potentially lose a game, and I know the Thunder players got to rest also plenty, but you got to rest your guys, right? McDaniels played 26 minutes. Ant only had to play 30 minutes. So it all builds off of each other in those scenarios. And as opposed to coming out of that timeout, not being ready to respond, and OKC getting it to 15, and you probably have to play it all the way to the end of the game. I thought that was an impressive response after timeout. And this is another one where I hope we get a good game finally. I want to see a close game from these two teams. But I'm interested to see how they respond. This is a great SGA game, right? Because we're sitting here for 10 minutes going, Minnesota changed this, they changed that, Gobert this, under ball screens, can he shoot pull-up threes, etc. It's okay, how do you respond? What is he able to figure out now after watching the film today to go into Monday and attack that in game 4? And that's what makes series so exciting, right? Because you can see this stuff regular season, you see it happen and then you kind of forget about it. This 2 days later, all right, SGA, what do you got here? And I assume we see something because he's one of the best in the game.
So I'm thinking of game 4 as more of a Dagnall game.
Sure.
How does he adjust to get Shea easier shots?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of if Minnesota wins game 4, I think game 5 would then become okay, the same way we just talked at the top about game 3 being a defining game for Karl Anthony Towns, coming up in the fourth quarter, being able to dominate in the way that he did. At that point, game 5 for me for Shea would be the same. He needs to step up. He needs to be the guy in some respect and just says, screw it. I'm the MVP of the league. I'm going to get buckets and I'm going to score on you. And you can't stop me from doing that. Look, the other thing that's real here is didn't get a lot of foul calls, right? 4 free throws in this game. I think that the fact that they played such a conservative defense where they went under everything made it much harder for the Timberwolves to get out of position defensively and put the refs in position to where they could call fouls. If you're just in front because you're going under ball screens, you always are there, harder to call fouls, right? So it's harder for Shea to kind of work his magic and draw fouls in that way. So I think that was a huge factor. I think that the defensive strategy of Finch, in the same way that my strategy was, hey, let's just put Ant on him and dare the refs to call fouls, right? I think that they did the better thing here. Hot take, Chris Finch is smarter than me when it comes to strategy. Play more conservative ball screen coverages, pick up points lower on the court, make sure that you're always putting your body in front, and make Shea hit pull-up threes. I think that is what worked out really, really well here.
Yeah, no, it worked out well. And again, it's sometimes those strategies, you come out and it surprises a team and it works. And then you see, okay, well, what do they come back with it? And that's where I think you're right with Dagnall is, okay, is the answer for OKC now Shea off ball actions, right? Because you get him moving off the ball. Maybe you can get him curl into a mid-range jumper, curling off an off ball screen to get to a spot, because those actions happen a little bit different angles, stuff like that. So it'll be fascinating to see what Dagnall has in response to that. And, also they weren't, Chet 10 points, J-Dub 13 points. I know the minutes weren't great, but, response for a lot of guys here in game 4 on Oklahoma City. And then can Minnesota continue to knock down shots, right? Dante, Nas, off the bench. Also quick, Terrence Shannon Jr. came in and gave a real spark plug to them as well. Just, he took a couple shots. I was like, man, let's chill a little bit, but it was hard to blame him with just like the energy that he made. Like you're going to feel his presence on the floor for sure.
You definitely will feel his presence. That's true. There's no doubt about that. You're gonna know he's out there because he's gonna do stuff. He's always gonna be aggressive and attacking. I thought defensively it kind of went against him a few times against J-Dub, honestly. But offensively, it's kind of what they needed in the start of that second quarter, where you just need to keep the rhythm going. You need to keep the flow going. Don't let Oklahoma City have a bit of a comeback here. I liked it.
Also, Jaden McDaniels hit a 3. Because he always hits at least one.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the Oklahoma City side of this thing let us down a little bit. But, we finally lost one over on Prize Picks after drilling the same thing in back-to-back games. So that was unfortunate. Shout out to the folks over at Prize Picks.